Welcome to Outspoken, where we dive deep into the topics and intersection of technology, money, business, and passion. I'm your host, Shana Cosgrove.
In my mind, it's all about time. Go back to this kind of phrase that I've heard a lot of leaders say from watching them. Time is the enemy. They want to see results sooner, and it requires you to be an agitator is the wrong word, but I guess what I would say is persistently annoying. So you get people a little out of their comfort zones. If you get that reputation as somebody who can get stuff done, then good things are going to happen to you. So just be the GSD person, get stuff done person.
At NDIA Technology Solutions, we believe America's warfighters deserve the absolute best technology advantage on the battlefield. We are an AI engineering company focused on helping the Department of War move faster, think smarter, and achieve true information dominance. Our team builds mission-ready artificial intelligence, advanced data platforms, and decision advantage capabilities that help leaders see clearly and act decisively. In a world where the speed of information can determine victory, NDIA is committed to delivering strength through innovation, ensuring our nation stays secure, competitive, and ready for whatever comes next. NDIA Technology Solutions is an SBA-certified 8A, woman-owned small business. Our contract vehicles include GSA Mass, 8A Stars 3, and MDA Shield. For more information, partnering opportunities, or the latest job openings, please check out our website, www.nila.io, or email us at hello@nila.io. Thank you, Dan, for being here today. I appreciate it.
Good to see you again, Rena.
Now, Dan, we met as part of the NDIA Emerging Tech Conference.
We did. You were my battle buddy for a pretty good panel that we had at NDIA.
Do you remember the title of the panel?
We talked a lot about just the challenges for the smalls, the mediums, and the bigs, and the partnerships that have to happen. Everybody's focused on the same objective, which is accelerating the adoption of these technologies. We talk a lot about the barriers, not the solutions. We just spent a lot of time on solutions with some really knowledgeable panelists. I was actually really pleased with the level of discussion we had.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And their willingness to try a new format. We tried to not do a traditional talking head format, but get them to organize and challenge groups and develop a response like an MBA team. Here's your challenge. What do you think the answer is? Do not come to us with problems. Only come to us with what the solutions are. I was disappointed there was no whiteboard on the stage. I really wanted a whiteboard with a camera on it. We had all these brilliant engineering minds up there coming together, and I wanted them in essentially a real-time solutioning, which wasn't quite what it worked, but I did appreciate that some of the panelists did create essentially as close to hand-drawn slides as they would. I was asking them to just jot down things, take a picture of it and throw it on a slide for the purposes. We got close to that. We got some good analogy images up there. I think we had a pie, we had a graveyard.
We had a pie, we had a graveyard. You got people out of their comfort zones enough, though. It didn't feel like your typical stuffy panel where everything is pre-canned. You felt like people were a little bit more genuine as you started pushing in some of the responses that they gave. You could tell that they struggle with this in their day jobs. To see them break out and be able to be a little bit more free-flowing in the discussion was fun.
Yeah. And then Stuart Wagner felt like a nail on the coffin that I refused like a zombie. He pointed out the challenge we have with our peer adversaries and the sheer size and scale of the number of people that they have working in a communist environment. And we have this democracy and highly competitive, constant evolution. You might have one product and then you have a competing product at the same time. Versus China, it's probably all straight down tops engineering of requirements, no conflicting products, but that leads to a lack of competition, which leads to a lack of innovation. Motivation as well. Capitalism helps with people are highly motivated to solve these problems as fast as possible.
It does. The monolith we have in mind when we think about Chinese Communist Party planning is similar to Ghost Plan in the Soviet Union. I think that they've been able to make an interesting adaptation in terms of incentivizing startups, having the ability to cull the herd towards a national priority. I think there are comparative advantages that the United States brings that are leaps and bounds ahead of what China can put on the table. The distinction in my mind is, like you said, it's do we have a vector nationally? We have that North Star that we're all swimming towards. There's been a lot of momentum over the past couple of years in particular that it's shaping up, and you're starting to get a consensus about the need to be the winner in the AI race, although that's still pretty hard to define. I think you're seeing sort of public-private partnerships in a way that are intermingling the barrier between the two in order to get us to the front of the race. So I'm confident that we'll stay there, but it does take a real national consensus to move in that direction. The hope is that we can keep bringing the American people along behind us on the journey.
Yeah. I told the analogy that my son had just told me that weekend that why the Americans won the Revolutionary War. The British came and they lined up and they fought the way that they had been told. The Americans used the indigenous people's method of fighting, which was bobbing and weaving and coming in from different sides and in unexpected ways. It's that innovation, I think, that America still is known for, its extreme innovation.
Yeah. And we had to learn the hard way there. We had allies and partners along the way. I think there is no reason why we shouldn't be at the front of this race based on all the factors that we've got in our corner. When it comes down to it, though, it's the consensus issue that to me is the most important glue that's going to hold us together. You can see it where we lose the public support to build data centers, for instance. The narrative on job displacement overcomes the narrative for benefits that widespread AI adoption is going to give us. I think there's a lot of shaping that we still have to do to make sure that nobody's left out, that everybody can see a path to greater prosperity because of this innovation. That's really going to give it the fuel it needs rather than a central planning committee telling you this is what you have to do. You've got to get people to believe in it.
I love it. You come at it from the political perspective of it, not politics necessarily, but the winning the hearts and minds so that there's not preventing it. I'm coming at it from an engineering solution of, what are all the components we need to wire together to have the information dominance? You're like, at the end of the day, you can still have people blocking the building of the tech. It's always in tech, actually, part of the solution is getting the data out of someone, unlocking, having the integration actually working together and having the person build it. Now, I know you don't want to talk about yourself, Dan, but I did get you talking when you were driving up to the conference about yourself and your background. What was your previous job before where you are today?
I left government service in December of 2024, and it followed a 20-year civil service job in DOD, now DOW. And my last job was as a chief digital and AI officer at Special Operations Command. So really was no better way to go out. Working with special forces on those missions, right, on bringing the soft enterprise through this digital transformation journey. It was just fabulous. I learned a ton. It was just great to be able to contribute to the mission. Prior to that, I was in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, now Office of the Secretary of War. I had a variety of jobs. I started in the policy shop in the Undersecretary, working regional offices like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, and Syria, and functional offices like the Strategy Office, the one that writes the National Defense Strategy. My last sort of series of jobs was in the immediate office of the Secretary and the Deputy, where by some crazy quirk of circumstance, I ended up spending 5 years across 3 administrations and 12 acting and confirmed secretaries and deputies as a special assistant and senior advisor. That was hugely educational. I got to be in the room where it happened on more occasions than I deserved, but it was great. My singular focus at the beginning was really helping the secretary and the deputy, CEO and COO of a $3.8 trillion organization, pull all the levers that they could bureaucratically to move the department towards the national defense strategy. So I got to touch everything from acquisition to human capital with financials through to operations and plans. It was really a great experience, and I felt like I had a really good impact and got hooked on data and AI as part of that. You can't really manage an organization that big through PowerPoint. So many of the decision modalities, we've done it for a long time. I used to joke that McNamara, if he were still alive, could walk into the Secretary of Defense's office and see a lot of very similar decision memoranda, information memos, briefings. The pathology of how you manage at scale is still very rooted in the late 60s, early 70s in terms of defense management. I saw data analytics as a way to sort of not break that paradigm, but update that paradigm. That was a cultural shift. When you introduce these data analytics to really high-powered varsity level discussions, You take people off guard. So it was a transition journey for sure.
Before you were at the CDAO for SOCOM, you were at OSD CDAO as well, right?
Correct. Essentially, what I did in the immediate office resulted in a decision from Deputy Secretary Hicks to consolidate several organizations in OSD that had bits and pieces of data analytics and data governance policy into one organization, the Office of the Chief Digital and AI Officer. I essentially did all of the behind the scenes merging of 4 very disparate organizations. So all the human capital and budget consolidation and setting the initial sort of investment priorities for that organization. Anybody who's worked a merger and acquisition knows just how painful those are. I was pretty fried by the time I got through that initial merger. And I thought it was time to look for the exit in the Pentagon. General Brian Fenton, then the SOCOM commander, asked me to come down to be a CDAO.
So when you were the SOCOM CDAO, was it a new office? Were you establishing that office for the first time there?
So actually, I was the third SOCOM. SOCOM was the first combatant command to establish a chief digital officer, chief data officer. We transitioned the title essentially when I came on board. I was super fortunate. I fell in on a great team, a team that already had a really solid vision about what to do. My job was really similar to what I did in the secretary's office, to focus on execution, to get the senior leaders on board with it, to drive investment. So it was great. And again, SOCOM is such a fantastic organization. You've got a lot of energy there to move fast and break things and be first movers and adopters. And then again, leadership that was just totally bought into doing the transition.
What did you think you did really well there? I'm going to put it back on you, praising the team, but what was it about that role that you think leads the organization to success? What do you think that you added to that role or added to that vision?
There's this dichotomy where in every large scale enterprise has got this, where the board or the senior leadership is like, we have to get some more AI. You could bring in a tranche of technologists who really understand the technology really well. Or you can bring in an insider who understands the culture well and be able to translate from the technologist in terms of what investment is needed, how you can go about delivering value up to the senior leadership. The way I would say it is, I'm very familiar with the defense culture, and I'm able to take the value that the technology can bring and apply it to that culture, its processes, its decision-making cycles, how you actually see value from it long term. To me, that translation function between technologists and senior leaders that just don't have time, they don't understand the technology, they don't have time to transition the way they're doing business. To me, those are the people that I felt like I was effective at trying to bring along the journey. That transition that we talked about in digital transformation, it really starts at that level, right? Not at the 4-star at the top necessarily, although that's a critical piece. It's those 2 stars and 1 stars and colonels who have to do a lot of the management and the work and just don't see the value initially of, why do I need to use data analytics? Why do I need to learn how to do it? How is it going to make me do my job better? So a lot of the value I brought was in bringing them along the journey. The team can always do the technology great. I don't want to call it a frozen middle, but it's that senior to mid tier that has to understand what the value is.
I think that there's always this push-pull of you're making an investment, and investment will show up and show its value in several years, or you're making an investment so that in 5 years it works, but they have a problem today. So the push-pull of the immediacy of solving today's problem with a belief of here's what's being built. And then you add the third layer from technology, which is that the technology changes all the time. So as a person investing in technology, you don't even know the state of the art and what's going to be needed when you hit that 5-year state of your investment today.
Yep.
It's this challenge of enterprise solutions with small patchwork things or tiny solutions that solve a tactical issue or some pain point today, trying to balance that and maintain it all, understanding of it and balance it. So what? Like, why do I care? I think people have had AI shoved down their throat and they've been told it's coming, it's going to be good and it's going to be terrible. It has all of these major upsides and major potential downsides. No one knows today how to use it or what it should change their job or how it's changing their job yet. I think the so what is so critical. So back to your PowerPoints, one of the values of PowerPoints is people had to consolidate that deep amount of research, the analytics that you'd put together, the dashboard, because when you see a dashboard, you still at the end of the day are like, so what?
Yep.
What about this dashboard do I actually care about? I need to know what. And the beauty of a PowerPoint, or that should be a PowerPoint, is the summary is there.
Yep.
Not full paragraphs, which is what people still like to do. The summary is there, and an image which really encapsulates the idea that you're trying to achieve. People need a vision as well. So yes, words are good. Pictures
Better.
Really help. Yeah.
Yeah, as I really got deep into this transition from a policy person to a data and AI person, I geeked out on some of the literature out there about how have successful businesses made this transition. What I bring is a perspective of scale. And even at SOCOM, it's 70,000 people, a $15 billion a year budget in every operational environment you can dream of. What actually brings the whole enterprise? What are those things that lift all boats? You certainly have people solving tactical and operational problems that are just moving out with great speed, but it leaves the rest of the enterprise behind. So my thought was, how do I look across the entire enterprise and think about those policies or governance moves or investments or use cases that are really going to bring all boats up at the same time? I think it was a McKinsey report I read, essentially looked at a study of digital transitions across different size enterprises in industry. What they found is that the journey is 30% technical, but 70% cultural. I think that resonates with what I've seen too. The technology does constantly shift, and that's another huge translation problem. When you walk into let's say, the big decision forum where we make budget decisions inside a DoD is called the DMAG, Deputies Management Advisory Group. Anybody can walk into a DMAG, and when there's a DMAG on tactical air, like everybody understands, okay, aircraft, it has avionics, it has a weapons suite, it has comms. Everybody can understand that. When you go in and say, no, I need money for cloud. I need money for a data layer. I need money for data scientists and AI engineers to be able to go in and actually build things. Their eyes go cross. They don't understand how the technology comes together. They're getting constantly bombarded by industry that are using different terms. All of a sudden, the conversation is about tokens overnight. It's a hard journey to keep up with because the tech is moving so fast. But in my mind, it all comes back to culture.
With AI, you can't always see. So it's this huge expensive cost. You can see a data center occasionally if you're driving. It's a huge amount of work for this chatbot to show up, or now I'm not doing PowerPoint, or now my analytic is more accurate. So we just had an employee who was briefing at the joint staff, and it was on data governance and the value of data governance. And I said, oh my God, I work in this, and data governance word is so boring. What people want to know is that today it's garbage. When they go to get an answer, they cannot trust the answer. So it comes down to data governance. Sure, it's a great word. It's a technical word, and people in that space understand and anchor to it. But the users, they know that they cannot go to the system and get something that's good. Maybe it's accurate. You can't really trust it. You still have to run down and verify the authority of it. And now you're going to solve that problem, and it's going to be great and complete. It's all going to work. You're going to have a higher level of trust of that data that you're using to inform your decision.
The formula that I would use from time to time is that the journey is really a function of data, people, architecture, and it's all bounded by governance and use cases that deliver value. I show them this data AI hierarchy of needs pyramid where literally 80% of the work you have to do up front is on data. The data is a nightmare in the Defense Department. I would say in a lot of large scale organizations, they've got the same problem. It's really like blue collar, roll up your sleeves. We have got to focus on data readiness. It's not the exciting part that people want to jump into right away. You can't miss that step.
That trust is so critical. We have had so many data scientists, and they have to sit with the analyst or the mission operator to build that trust of this is how you can trust this analytic. Before, you used to do it in your brain, or you would gather this information. If you don't do that cleanup, then they don't trust it and they're not going to use it. Getting the adoption, even when you get it technically working, is that critical 70% piece of getting people to use it. You didn't even bring it up, but sometimes people actively try to kill your project.
There's those people. You always get the haters out there. It falls into your typical distribution where you've got 20% of the people that are like, yeah, let's do it. I'll try it. I'll spend some time on this with you. Then you've got 60% of the people that are like, if I'm told to do it, I guess I'll have to do it, but they're not really excited to do it. Then you got your 20% that are just never going to change and that are actively going to try and find the one fault. What I tell a lot of people is very few instances do we make decisions with 100% accuracy and certainty. Very few. Particularly the closer you get to the operational side, they're happy if they get a 70% answer immediately rather than 100% answer in 5 weeks.
It's just engineers because they love the binary so much. In engineering, it's either right or wrong. It works or it doesn't work. How you got there might change. In engineering, there's a correct answer. It's not variable. It's not subjective. There is a correct answer. They have a really hard time understanding that you still have to move forward in a time frame with the information that you have and the state that you have.
And in my mind, it's all about time. Go back to this kind of phrase that I've heard a lot of leaders say from watching them. Time is the enemy. Now, decision cycles for us are excruciating long when we try to make big decisions. It takes forever for us to be able to hear something, ask for a question. That question goes down 8 layers of the cake. Somebody gets it. It takes them 2 weeks to put together the information. It has to go back up 8 layers of the cake. By the time the information is presented back to a senior leader, the narrative is shifted or you've lost momentum, you've lost time. I really think you've got to focus on collapsing that decision cycle down. To me, again, most senior leaders would prefer to have their answer 80% right with caveats. Don't pitch it as though it's perfect, but say, we think this is probabilistically the right answer to the question you asked rather than 6 months. It just kills us in terms of our decision-making velocity.
So what can we do to speed it up? What's the answer?
Part of this is just about relentless incrementalism. You get to look at this and say, okay, there are pockets that are going to be able to see success faster because they have the right alignment of leadership, data, use cases, and architecture. I think for most of that 60%, it's going to just be relentless incrementalism. You're going to have to work with them step by step on their data, work with them step by step to make sure that they've got data scientists or AI engineers that they can talk to about their problems and then introduce into their workflows and their processes. I really think we need more investment. DoD spends about 8% of its budget on IT right now. If you benchmark the S&P 500, it's close to 15%. The CIO's budget has historically been a source of savings. Sometimes we have to start treating this capability area like a strategic asset. That was a lot of the investment internal discussions that I was able to have was, look, this is a source of warfighting advantage. And you need to put it on par when you think about investment relative to your other sources of warfighting advantage in your capability portfolio. You can't do this on the cheap. It does cost money. It costs money in terms of architecture and people.
As the war moves to being less kinetic and it becomes more influencing of behaviors of the mass and the cyber in cyber processing and recognizing cyber threats is all non-kinetic. Occasionally it has major vulnerabilities because things won't work or the potential attacks on our critical infrastructure. You make 2 really great points. One, I love the phrase relentless incrementalism. It makes me think of like an Instagram reel of if you get 1% better every day. Then from you loving business books, I forget the author, but the flywheel, that internally people can't see it. Internally, you're just grinding away and you're grinding and you're working and you're working. And outside, eventually you become this butterfly. That's what everyone can see. They don't see all the intense sausage making that keeps going. But that's really what's needed is just keep doing it. Just keep improving. Then your second element of this AI, this data processing, this analytic is on par with a weapon system because it is going to be a key element of our arsenal for information dominance.
Yeah, the spectrum of warfare in terms of the applicability of AI, it does start with phase 0, just like you said, but it really does extend throughout the entire spectrum of warfare across domains. The ability to step back and say, okay, what is the architecture and investment that I need to make in order to improve performance of my operational force across each phase of the spectrum? Those are really hard conversations to have because AI could be everywhere. It doesn't fit neatly in one bin. It's one of those capabilities that's going to increase the performance from left of conflict through to conflict and post-conflict. I think what we've seen in Ukraine, you hear it constantly. The army is taking this on to heart very well. The lessons coming out of it are very focused on drones and the impacts of drones on future warfare. And it's real in a large-scale ground campaign where air dominance isn't established by either side. So we know that's going to be a critical component of the future of warfare. Equally as concerning, I think, is something you said. It's related to, the electromagnetic spectrum and the cyber environment and the algorithmic warfare for sentiment in human minds. I think each of those, in my mind, are very heavily dependent on our ability to use data and AI to be able to map the battle space. The reality is Ukraine is a transparent battlefield. The element of maneuver is incredibly difficult right now, not just because of drones, but because of all of the traditional and non-traditional intelligence that's over the battle space. We've got to think about how do we operate our forces in an environment where they are immediately subject to electromagnetic detection or visual detection in a way that we haven't had to deal with in the past. To me, that's scary. When you lose the ability to maneuver on the battle space without any type of element of surprise, because your signatures and your emissions are so high, you're subjecting your forces to how performant the other side's algorithms are at finding you in that noise. Based on the speed of adoption we've seen, it could be a really big factor in our ability to project power in the future.
Let's go back to you for a second. One of the things I noticed most about you is your ability to work with or handle a variety of very intense personalities. I'm sure, given your history working up there in the office, you honed it as well. What do you think was a skill that you had to learn or optimize for working in a very intense, critical environment with very important decisions being made and still focusing on the outcome and all the different personalities?
For me, first and foremost, it was a full contact environment. You could get beat up very easily by a 4-star for saying the wrong thing, or you could have an undersecretary throw you under the bus in front of the secretary. I always had leadership that believed in me and was willing to say, okay, I trust Dan enough to know that he's not going to go off the rails, that he's executing my intent. When you create a little bit of waves in the bureaucracy, as long as you're meeting the boss's intent and you're trying to do the right thing, not playing games. I've been fortunate to have leaders that have been able to absorb that with me. So that's been phenomenal. The other piece is, while it's high pressure, it's nothing like what our operators have to deal with. I sat in an office. I went to meetings in a conference room. I wasn't living in the field where you've got a different type of high pressure environment to deal with. Having a little bit of perspective is helpful too. Nobody was shooting at me. Ultimately, if you feel confident that you've got right on your side in terms of the substance and the policy, and you operate in a way that, again, just don't be a jerk. Just be transparent with people. To me, that was how I looked at the world. It's a Popeye the Sailor Man mentality. I am what I am. Deal with it. And hopefully my boss isn't going to fire me.
Did you ever have a mess up that makes you wince?
I've had substantive mess ups and management mess ups. I could run through the list of substantive mess ups. The reality is that hindsight gives you 20/20 vision. You can always look back and say, okay, I did not get the outcome that we thought this policy or this decision was going to enable. But in doing that reflection, I also have to ask myself, what was the risk of inaction? If we hadn't have tried to do something, what alternative path would we be on? So I came to peace a little bit with that when I would say, okay, we did something at the time we thought it was the right decision because we were trying to solve a real problem. It did not deliver the outcome we wanted. But what if we'd have done nothing? Would we be in a better place? So that's helped me give me a warm blanket around some of these substantive failures. But yeah, I've screwed up a lot. And again, I called it the hat trick when I was in the secretary's office. You used to have to get thrown under the bus by the chief of staff of a service secretary, and an undersecretary.
You ring the bell then? Kind of like a little trophy that people passed around when it officially happened.
Plenty of times. Yeah, I may hold the record. I was executing boss's intent, and people don't like change sometimes. It goes back to this temporal aspect, Shana. It's, these political leaders, these 4-stars, sometimes they just don't have years to see things to the end. So they want to see results sooner. And it requires you to be an agitator is the wrong word, but I guess what I would say is persistently annoying. So you get people a little out of their comfort zones.
Yeah, I think that's the balance you've had in your job that we've been talking through is you're working on something that takes a while and takes multiple years. How do you show value in the shorter term? And how do you express that value? How do you not get senior people to kill it either? When things take a while, what is that balance between implementing some enterprise solution that lifts the entire boats versus, all right, we got 2 wins that are very clearly valuable here, maybe messy underneath, but it's a start of the enterprise solution.
When you are fortunate enough to be in a position where you can influence decisions at scale, then my instinct is that you should be thinking at scale. We do find some victory in pilots and we find victory in certain successes. I always take a step back and say, again, it's like we have a $3.8 trillion enterprise in the Department of Defense. If you've got a series of victories that are small scale, like great, hold them up as examples to inspire everybody, but you better get after the rest of the pie. I felt like that was always the responsibilities of the people that I've worked for is they've got huge influential decisions that they've got to make that operate at scale. So they needed advice to talk about how you lift that whole pie up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. What advice do you have for young people today, professionally, who are pursuing serving, whether it be as a civilian or any role in the Department of War and National Defense?
So there's maybe two buckets. One bucket is a couple of frameworks to think about your career, and another bucket, what are some maxims to live by? Start with the first bucket. I had an NDU professor that I had coffee with once, and he said, your career is like Clausewitz. I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to go down that route. It really is the interaction of what you're good at, what your strengths are, along with what you think you want to do, along with luck. The reality is that luck plays a huge role in what ends up happening in your career. Being in the right place at the right time, being associated with great teams and great leaders. Those factors aren't always in your control. The more you can tip that in your favor in terms of the teams and the bosses and the substance, the more likely you're going to be successful. The other sort of construct that I was given at one point after a very long set of working hours by a very senior person was, Dan, there's only 4 things. There's work, there's family, there's health, and there's fun. And you can't have them all. I was shocked. I was like, I don't think that's true, boss. The reality is you only have a certain amount of time. And, how you choose to fill your time with those buckets is a real choice you make. I don't think anybody should spend all of their time on one of those buckets and have that dial to 100% and squeeze out everything else. What I would tell people is just be prepared to adjust your stats as you go through life.
What are your top maxims?
Somebody told me this long ago, and I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I think it makes a lot of sense. This ecosystem that we're in is an iterative game with a limited number of actors. And you've got to get a reputation as somebody who gets stuff done. People spend a lot of time cultivating their networks and doing these type of events and living the DC life. What I found is that your reputation is based on, do you actually get stuff done? Do you drive where you're supposed to go? And it may not feel at the time like you're having the impact you want, or it's not on the topic you want. But if you get that reputation as somebody who can get stuff done, then good things are going to happen to you. So just be the GSD person, get stuff done person. The last thing I'd say is just be your own person. There's so much of flocking with the crowds. I would just say you just have to choose your own path and live your own life. There's not a lot in your career, I think, that people are just going to hand you. You actually have to be active in choosing where you want to go. So you have to chart your own path. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but just don't follow the flock.
I think sometimes it's hard to not follow the flock because you think that's a good decision. The decision they're making to go with the norm and to deviate from the norm seems very scary. So I understand why it's hard to not want to follow everybody and to really trust yourself that this unknown, unique decision that doesn't make sense to maybe anybody and just your gut is telling you to do it is an act of bravery.
It's hard. And a lot of people don't like getting out of their comfort zones. I really think that's a key to growth is you have to challenge yourself to learn a new topic, go into a meeting and be comfortable with the fact that you don't understand a word that's being said because you're learning when you do that. And I think sometimes we get just very comfortable in our stovepipes and it really locks our perspective in a really negative way. I don't think anybody should pass up the opportunity for growth. And again, stepping in those meetings where it's like, what was that acronym? What was that acronym? It means you're learning.
Yeah. You are a huge reader. For those of you not watching, all I can see is books behind them. I'm a big scanner of people's stuff to let their objects inform me. What is one of your favorite books that you recommend to others?
When I get depressed about the state of the world, I think back to Steven Pinker's book, Better Angels of Our Nature. It's a tour de force of human history and violence over the course of human history. It brings in a lot of really fascinating data from not just literary, but from archaeology and human psychology and what we found in genetics. It's really just a cross-functional integration of the trajectory of violence over the human experience. And, the reality is we're living in great times compared to our ancestors. He makes it clear it's not a guarantee. It's not just going to continue getting better. There's chances that the war gods are going to roll their dice and we'll be back to a state of badness for humanity. But again, we're living in probably the most prosperous and safest time in human history right now. And we tend to forget that with the noise that comes at us every day in the news.
Now, tell me something about yourself that might surprise.
I've got another cool little trick. I've been to every country that ends in Stan, except for Uzbekistan. I was right at the border with Uzbekistan, but they weren't letting Americans in at the time. That's kind of my party trick. I've been to every country that ends in Stan.
Was that a goal?
It was definitely not a goal. I had no idea. Yeah, life events, but man, it was just fascinating. I've just been so fortunate in my career to go to some really fascinating places on some really interesting work, but it's not a part of the world most people can get to.
And where are you living now?
I'm just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, in Cary.
What made you decide to move there?
My family's from North Carolina. My wife's family's from North Carolina. So we wanted to be a bit closer to home. Wanted to get out of the DC environment for a while. Everybody goes through this at some point. Your parents are getting older and your kids are in school and you just go all in on being a logistician and move your kids around every day. So that's where we're at right now.
If we come visit you near Raleigh, what's the number one thing we should do and the number one thing we should eat?
I'll be biased, but I think going to UNC Chapel Hill is always a nice thing. It's such a pretty campus, particularly in the fall. It's just really good to go to a football game or go to a basketball game or something like that. That would be number one on the list. In terms of the food, the barbecue is really pretty phenomenal. There's some pretty good barbecue places around here that I'd put on your list.
How do you eat your barbecue? You have coleslaw and cornbread? What's the main side dish? Is it
straight up with vinegar and just douse it in barbecue sauce and vinegar? Not your thick Western style barbecue sauce, more of the hot Eastern vinegar based stuff. That's where I'm at right now. Love some mac and cheese and banana pudding with it and I'll be happy.
Oh, good. Oh yeah. Banana pudding. Forgot about that. Anything else I should have asked you?
I think we definitely covered a lot, Shana, and nothing comes to my mind, but really great to talk to you again. Glad to see you on screen and that you're doing well.
Yeah. I think my takeaway from you is investment in our IT infrastructure, which I'm including like the AI and the digital, and make it big, make it a big investment to rise all boats and advance us faster.
100%. If you leave people out of this, it doesn't help overall performance, whether it's performance against your business objectives or your operational objectives. It takes an enterprise to win. We've got to make sure there's nobody left out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
No, awesome to see you again, Shana. Yeah, thank you for making the time. Great to chat.
Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with friends and family. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook under the Outspoken Podcast. Thanks again, and until next time.
Do you remember the title of the panel?
See, this is where the editing comes in handy, Shana. My short
I promised to edit this.